My round of applause. None of this would happen without Maya. And yeah, we're going to hear from a few of our partners across the state. I strong armed some of our partners in the room into giving us brief synopses of what they're working on, perhaps as well, if time allows. But we're going to start with Ben Hughey down in Sitka. He's the ED of Sitka Trailworks. You may remember him from the very sexy video of exploding trees from last year. That was my personal favorite. And yeah, Ben's got lots of exciting stuff happening down in Sitka. I feel like, sorry, Ben, you gave us a bio, but I'm going to say other stuff, which includes that Ben's born and raised Sitkan and, went away to college, lived on the East Coast, lived on the West Coast, came home during COVID to work for the organization that he worked for in high school, on trail crew in high school, right, Ben? Yeah. And then came back during COVID to do some trail work and be closer to home, and now is the executive director of Sitka Trailworks. So I think it's when we talk about how trail jobs are real jobs, like, and the pipeline of how that might keep like talented, smart people in the communities that they come from. I feel like other talented, other smart people. No, Ben is both talented and brilliant. I think that it is a great, Ben's like the case study. Ben's what you want. Like, you want them to come home and contribute meaningfully to our communities. So sorry for embarrassing you, Ben. Um, but yeah, Ben's been the ED at Sitka Trailworks since 2021. And who in the room has been to Sitka? We're at like 60%, Ben. Can you see that? Can you see the room? It's kind of, yeah. Who's hiked on a trail in Sitka? Cool. Their trail system, I feel like you're punching above your weight class. For size of town and like how incredible the trails are there and the mileage and the craftsmanship. And yeah, anyway, if you haven't been to Sitka, highly recommend go visit Ben and check out their trails. And Ben, I'm going to kick it over to you. Tell us what you've been working on. You should be able to share your screen if you'd like to, but let's do a quick, yep, perfect. Awesome. Thanks.
Cool. Yeah, that's coming through.
Perfect.
Nice. Yeah. Thanks for the intro. Good to be here virtually again. I wish I could be up there in person, but it's the start of the trail season here down in Southeast Alaska. We had 7 crew members start this week in our training, so we've been busy, boots on the ground. Just did some rigging work yesterday. Similar to the photo you're looking at, had Laurent from the Forest Service come out and played around with grip hoists as the end of our first week of training. So I just wanted to give you a couple updates from last year's season, um, to keep you in the loop on what we're up to and what trail work is like down here in remote Southeast Alaska. But I wanted to start with just a little background for those who aren't familiar. This nonprofit was founded when the pulp mill closed in Sitka, lost a ton of jobs. It was the major employer in town, and Ted Stevens got some stimulus money for the community, and the city took citizen proposals. A few residents thought that we could put people back to work building trails, and that's how this organization was started. Today, we do a lot of work in reducing barriers to the outdoors, whether that's on the ground infrastructure work or programming. So we have hikes, events every week, and we've got a youth program. It's all led by a 9 member volunteer board of directors. And right now, we're up to, I believe, 13 staff at the moment, with all seasonals. And we're aiming for about full 4 year-round permanence. I want to show you, here's a little overview. I'll show you a little map of the work we did last year, and then we'll highlight just a couple interesting projects, and give you a few other stats, and we can talk about what we're up to this year. So it sounds like many of you are familiar with Sitka. It is on the island of Baranof, and we are surrounded by other smaller islands. Cruise Off Island has several trails on it. It's a volcanic island. It's the one with that Mount Fuji like volcanic cone you can see in the topo there if your screen resolution is good enough. Amazing trail up to the top. The Forest Service had a contract to transport gravel. They had a local contractor barge and a helicopter and super sacks, and then they fired all their crew and they couldn't move the gravel. So we now have a challenge cost share to finish out the graveling and some new boardwalk on that trail. We, I'll share some. I think I'm gonna yeah, share some slides on that later. But we had some crew work and some volunteer work out on that trail, and we spent a lot of time on Mosquito Cove again. That was where we blasted a few years ago, but tons of work to be done. Halbert Point Recreation Site. Looks like SJ's Online is one of the most beloved state parks in our community. Is a waterfront park with these big pavilions and a loop trail system that was severed when a large staircase was crushed by some blowdown. And um, I'll share more about that. But long story short is we are using a lot of marine transportation to get around to these remote trails, all the way from the north end of Baranoff to the north end of Cruise Off and throughout the road system. So somewhat complicated logistics at times. The Mount Edgecombe Trail on Cruise Off, we've had a full week of crew time. Um, that was joint with the Forest Service and prepared for one big day with volunteers. We had already helicoptered in gravel, and in one day with a big group of volunteers, we ended up moving 30 cubic yards, which is more than 30 tons of gravel over 2,000 feet of trail. We have a local tour company, Alamarine Tours, and they donated the boat ride over, and we were able to take over 30 volunteers in this big catamaran, um, and ended up just being able to do a ton of work with a lot of hands moving gravel all day long. It's the landing is fairly tidally dependent, and so there were very few Saturdays with a high tide at the right time of day that allowed the boat to offload people, and the boat can't come back until it's high tide again. And so you get the volunteers for a very long day. It was like pretty much 12-hour day out on trail. So a lot of volunteer hours that day and got a lot of work done. It was pretty interesting. We kept morale up by taking frequent breaks. The rain wasn't too bad, and people just saw the impact so clearly. It's one of the things I like about gravel work is the physical progress is so visible. Halbell Point Recreation Site, as I mentioned before, that waterfront site had this huge staircase, huge flights, like four flights of stairs up this hillside, basically an exterior deck level, pressure treated dimensional lumber. And it had been built like 30 years ago. It was already starting to rot and then got hit by blowdown. So it was time for replacement already. Um, but this project was a big stretch for us. This is basically carpentry, woodworking, and our woodworking is usually round logs and rebar, not angles and hangers. So we were really fortunate to identify a couple retired folks in town, including a journeyman carpenter who were willing to jump onto the job and give our crew direction. This is the background image. You see Dale worked a whole career as a carpenter, and they just volunteered. Some old guys wanted to do the project, and we ended up the project site is, I don't know, what do you think, SJ? 100 yards from a road, something like that, and across a bridge and on a trail, including some steps up and down, so not accessible by wheeled equipment, which meant that all of our lumber, that super soaked old wood, hauling out, and hauling in all of our fasteners and lumber, was a lot of work. We ended up having volunteers just show up. Um, we just told people, hey, we're gonna be here Monday through Thursday. You show up anytime if you want. And there are people who lived in the neighborhood who had different schedules, and they'd show up and be like, okay, I'm gonna haul boards for a couple hours. Here's a pile. they knew where the piles were and where things went. And we just had a lot of that kind of spontaneous community involvement, which was feasible because it was relatively front country and this beloved park. Um, but pulled it off, even though when we started, it seemed almost infeasible. We opened that on Napa Glands Day with Representative Rebecca Himshoot in attendance. Um, and uh, that park is now has a complete loop, and elders and little kids are able to exercise with that handrail, be in nature with a little safer facility. Those are the project sites that I wanted to highlight today. Um, Thought I'd keep it short and sweet. This year, we're going to be back on a lot of those same trails, um, focused on areas where that are community priorities. But happy to share more if anybody has questions.
Does anybody in the room have a question for Ben? Ben, what about I'm just gonna kind of prompt you because I know, like, I feel like Sitka Trailworks has been super successful, but you have some resources there in town that help you be successful. Like, what's your relationship with the Coast Guard and with gravel materials and with boaters, like, who provide transportation? Like, how do you help them
Yeah.
in kind?
Yeah. I think it is a big part of our success is leveraging community support. Um, I thought I had a slide. I'm gonna stop sharing. Um, about the in-kind support we got. Yeah, I guess I didn't have it. But we have the good fortune of having an air station, a Coast Guard air station based in Sitka that has a couple helicopters that require their pilots to do regular load training. So they need to pick up stuff and move it to keep their certifications active. Um, and sometimes they end up picking up a piece of concrete at our training ground, spinning in a circle and putting it back down. The pilots don't like it. They know it's useless. They would way rather be doing interesting community benefit projects. And when that request comes from another federal agency, they're usually able to or another public agency, they're usually able to fulfill. Um, and the Forest Service and state parks works with us to route requests, and we've been able to move a lot of gravel that way. When it's infeasible to get a private contractor because we don't have any private contractor helicopters in town, which means paying the mobilization fee to fly a helicopter from Juneau or Ketchikan, which is a lot of money just to get it into town. Um, yeah, and there's several local six-pack small cruise charters that have donated time to get us to some of those remote trails before. So last year we had Bear Paw charters, a 90-foot steel boat with guest rooms to house six, provide transportation and lodging for our crew, which allowed us to do the Sea Lion Cove Trail and not have to deal with a whole camp setup in like one of the most bear dense zones on the island. And yeah, made it a lot more feasible.
Awesome, thanks. Megan asked in the chat, what are you most excited about for next year
Yeah,
or the next couple years?
great question, Megan. Um, we're at this point in the season where we're in the middle of training and like so many project logistics are up in the air and the excitement is on that borderline of like freneticism, anxiety, and like I think it's gonna happen, but I'm not sure. Um, that's where we're at this point in the season. I'm really excited to start work on the replacement of the Indian River Bridge. Kazdaheen is one of the most popular valley level, low elevation, accessible trails, and the bridge has been out for several years, rotted through, and the Forest Service has a Great American Outdoors Act money for it already. Just haven't been able to get around to it because of staff capacity, engineering constraints, and we're finally making progress. And I think we'll be able to start building those approaches this year, which would be huge.
Cool. Any questions for Ben? Awesome. Thank you so much for the update.
Yeah. Yeah. Happy to be here.
Megan, we're gonna kick it over to you. Meghan Tabacek is the executive director of Trail Mix, and she came from Missoula to Juneau in 2019 to go to school. And then she also, I feel like, is one of those stories where she came for school and then she started working for Trail Mix and has ascended at Trail Mix to become their ED over several years. Megan, I might have also like spilled the beans to the room about your very cool master's project, where you're talking about like historical
Yeah.
stuff. But yeah, so what's that? Oh, finish. Thanks. Yeah, great. Yeah, Megan has been with Trail Mix since 2020, so also a COVID starter in the trail world, and spent her first summer as a crew member on Horse Tram Trail and Point Bridget, and then transitioned into working behind the scenes a little bit more. And she's worked at every position at Trail Mix. Every,
Pretty
yeah.
close.
And was hired as ED about a year ago or 2 years ago now, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
2024.
Sweet. She's a baker. She teaches backpacking and backcountry nav at UAS through their outdoor studies program, and she's going to update us on what the heck's going on in Juneau. So take it away, Megan. Let's check your slides.
Awesome. Okay, perfect. I am going to share my screen here. Can everyone see my screen?
You look good to us.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so I am Megan Tabacek. I'm the director of Trail Mix. And yeah, I actually never saw myself in a career in trail work. I was supposed to be a guide, and then COVID happened, and trail work was one of the only jobs in Juneau that could keep you outside. And then I just absolutely fell in love with the work we did, and I had to know not just how we were building trails, but the whole story behind it. Yeah, I really hope next year I can come up and join you all in person. But yeah, also busy time for us, similar to Ben. The snow has finally melted out just in time for our cruise to start. So we had our cruise all start on Monday the 4th. So yeah, big busy season. So Trail Mix is located in Juneau. It is our mission to steward a safe and enjoyable trail system by bringing people and resources together for trail improvements and activities. And through that mission, so kind of a little bit today, I'm going to go just like briefly over who we are, talk about some of our 2025 trails with a spotlight on the Treadwell Ditch Trail, which is kind of our massive project we finished last year, and then kind of highlight some of our projects coming up. And so, yeah, the Treadwell Ditch Trail is really one of the main reasons why Trail Mix exists. In 1993, Juneau did a land management plan, a trails master plan. And in that plan, they identified that there should be a nonprofit that can help facilitate trail work across agency lines. And this was becoming really clear because the Treadwell Ditch is a 13-mile trail and it spans over city, Forest Service, state, mental health trust, and private land. And, you know, as hikers, you don't know where these borders are, but sometimes you would take 3 steps and all of a sudden the trail would be a vastly different quality than it was 3 steps ago. And so Trail Mix was founded by some really passionate hikers who were already kind of doing some vigilante boots on the ground trail work, and then formalized after this plan. And also kind of an exciting project coming up for us. Juneau has not done a trail plan since 1993. So we are in the process of leading the charge on that this winter. But that's really kind of how we formed. And over the years, we've grown a lot. So we have 10 members on our board. And then we have 3 year-round staff right now. Typically, we have 4. We've got a new engagement manager through the JV program starting in August. But right now, we're running 3 of us. So it is myself and my 2 trail coordinators who work year-round. And then the start of May is always kind of, as Ben was saying, that like frenetic, chaotic time because we go from 3 of us to 20 of us. So it gets a little bit busier around the shop once this time of year rolls around. And really, the gist of our work is we want to be a hub for all things trails in Juneau. So whether that's actually the on-the-ground trail work, trail planning, or running different events and activities so people can get out and explore trails that they maybe wouldn't otherwise go on, or connect up to new user groups who use our trail. And then we also work to provide trail resources. So on our website, if you're ever in Juneau, we have a Juneau Trail Guide on our website that has all of the public use cabins, tips and tricks on where to hike. And it's an interactive map that we're hoping to put a little more time into this winter. So yeah, we really strive to be a hub for all things trails in Juneau. And one of the ways we do that as well is engaging with different recreational groups. So we really focus on the fact that trails are for all and all are for trails here in Juneau. And so that means bringing into our fold the Mountain Bike Alliance, Trout Unlimited, the Disc Golf Association, the Off-Road Association, Discovery Southeast, which runs kids camps, and Juneau Climbing Alliance. So when working with these user groups, we try and focus on finding trails that they're already connected to, that they already love, and helping these user groups plug in and not just use the area for recreation, but give back and improve those areas for themselves and also all future recreators. So, a big part of our volunteer work is working with these different groups. This photo is from a Tea Harbor climbing day. So, we did a little bit of trail work and then we also brought a bunch of wire brushes and we're scrubbing the rocks. Bouldering in Southeast is kind of a never-ending battle against the slime and the moss. So one of our annual work parties is with the Climbing Alliance, scraping off boulders and improving the trails around it. Um, in 2025, we worked on a ton of trails. Our trails are kind of a mix between CBJ trails, City and Borough of Juneau, Forest Service trails, and state parks trails. We spend the majority of our time on city trails, especially last year as the Forest Service was going through staff cuts, reduction in service and funding. We ended up having to pull back from about 28 weeks worth of work with them. So a lot less last year. Luckily, things have stabled out. This year, we've got more work with the Forest Service again, which is really exciting. But it was a big city trail year for us last year. And as is the case in probably most of Alaska, but especially in Southeast, a lot of our work is drainage work. It is getting water off the trail. It is adding gravel so the water stops pooling up on the trail. It is adding culverts to get the water under the trail. It is a lot of making sure the water is not on the trail or at least moving off the trail in a way that it can be sustainable and last. We also have been doing a lot of work constructing bridges and turnpikes over the past couple years. And then another big push for us every single year is brushing. We have one crew that spends about 5 to 7 weeks brushing about 75 miles of Juneau Trail every year. Um, and it's a huge push, as with most places. If we don't brush our trails annually, some of them will just disappear very, very quickly. And as you can see too, with our projects, we have a hard hat if our crew was on it, a hand if our volunteer was there. And a lot of our projects really play off of each other. So crew will do kind of the first part of the work and then they will leave gravel bags and then we'll come in on the weekend and fill all the turnpikes that the crew spent building all week with gravel with volunteers. So we try and kind of have our volunteer program work in conjunction with our crews so they can play off of each other. And it's also just a really great way to see a huge impact on the trails. So, kind of by the hour, last year was a lot of hours on trail. We had 17K hours spent between all of our projects over the course of the season and throughout the year. And as I said earlier, a big majority of them was on city land. And then we also had this little chunk on Forest Service. And then in addition to that, we run our Youth Employment in Parks program. This is modeled after the Anchorage YEP program. And here in Juneau, it is a collaboration between Trail Mix, the Zach Gordon Youth Center, and Southeast Alaska Independent Living. We employ 14 to 17-year-olds who do hands-on trail work. We do a variety of projects. Some of them are more technical trail work, like working on turnpikes, drainage, and then some of them are different skill sets, like a landscaping project last year with Housing First Alaska. And what's really cool too about this program is Monday through Thursday, they spend it in the field doing trail work, and then Friday is kind of workforce development. So sometimes that's really fun things like taking kayaks out on Auk Lake. But other times that's like really important job building skills, and they'll have different career professionals from around Juneau come in and talk about their job. and they'll practice doing interviews, writing resumes. So by the end of the 8 weeks, they kind of leave with a very robust skill set of both professional trail work that they can add to their resume and then also the skills to build said resume and do interviews. We host a ton of volunteer days. Last year, we had 27 of them on 16 different trails. Our groups range from open call groups to the Ackman Triathlon, who's been working with us to improve a trail that they do a race on. Sticks to Picks, which was one of my favorite groups. They were a bunch of hockey players who wanted to find an activity to do together in the summer, so they chose to do some trail work, which was really cool. And then we just started a partnership with the Zach Gordon Youth Center for their Service Week camp, and that was kind of a fun challenge for me to figure out how to make trail work appropriate for 6 to 8 year olds. But it turns out they love carrying those mini buckets of gravel and they also love re-vegging. So we had a great time on trail with them. Over the course of 2025, we had 5,000 volunteer hours put into Juneau's trails. So between our crew and our volunteers, we spent around 22 thousand hours on Juneau's trails, and they definitely show it. They look a lot better. Every single year, that's the goal, is making trails look just a little bit better. And the project that I really want to highlight this year is our Treadwell Ditch Trail. So this was a Pittman Robertson grant that we received in 2018 that lasted through 2025. Last year, we did the ribbon cutting. So a partnership between Trail Mix, the city, the Forest Service, Department of Fish and Game, Wildlife Restoration, and Juneau Community Foundation. It was the first time Pittman Robertson had ever had that many agency partners on a grant, which was exciting and a lot of logistical coordination. But this project really came about because we have this phenomenal group of volunteers called the Volunteer Trail Maintenance Team. It is a group of about 30 retired dudes and one woman, Peggy. She's a rock star. And so these guys in 2018 had a vision of being able to bike end to end on the Treadwell Ditch without having to get off their bike. Treadwell Ditch was the first trail I ever ran in Juneau. I was not prepared to run 13 miles, but we did it. And there were a lot of gullies and steep sections, and you would have to crawl in and out of ravines. As of 2025, there is a bridge over every single crossing. So over those years, we had 45 crew members work on the trail, putting in over 10,000 hours of labor. The VTMT has put in 18,000 hours into the Treadwell Ditch. Honestly, it's probably closer to 19 now. They started their work as soon as the snow ended this year, and they're a very mighty and powerful group. And it's really cool too working with this group. Dave, who's one of the leaders on their leadership team, always jokes that their wives send him up there to keep him out of trouble. And it's really been amazing though to watch the community that they foster. One of their members, Eric Olson, last year was going through cancer treatment, and they would bring him up in a wheelbarrow on trail, and they'd set him up, and he would just hang out while everyone did their work. And he beat cancer, which was super exciting. And he credits a lot of the community from the VTMT for that. So not only is this, building a trail, it really was building the community for all of these members, and it's just been amazing to see. And so in total, over the course of that grant, 40 bridges were installed during the grant period, and there are 63 bridges total on the Treadwell Ditch. So here's a map of the ditch. If you come to Juneau, highly, highly recommend. You can rent a bike downtown and then get a shuttle ride up and do the whole trail. And one of the things that also is really cool that came out of this project is the VTMT meticulously documents all of their work in the bridges, and they worked on this map in conjunction with Capital City Fire and Rescue and Juneau Mountain Rescue. And so each of these 65 bridges has a metal tag on it with the number. And then CCFR and JMR have this map in a giant size in all of their offices so that if you get injured, you can call and say, hey, the last bridge I crossed over was number 31. And they will have a pretty decent idea at that point of where you are. So this was a really cool project, and also just like a really cool product that came out of it is just trying to keep the trail safer for those who use it. And so that's the Treadwell Ditch Trail. It was just It was phenomenal to see it completed. And yeah, it was just a really incredible project, and I'm so excited. We also have finished it, and now we've kind of been in the age of what is our next Treadwell ditch? What's our next big project? But coming up in 2026, we are back on a couple Forest Service trails. And our big project this year is we got a grant to build a public use cabin with the city. So this is our first ever cabin that we're building. We're working with a really great cabin contractor here in Juneau as part of the workforce development aspect of this. So that's kind of our big challenge this year is not just building trails, but building a cabin, which here in Juneau and I'm sure all across the state are some of people's favorite things to do on trails. And then, yeah, that's kind of our big project coming up. And then lots more trail work. And now we're kind of, now that the ditch is done, there are 5 different access trails to the ditch, many of them needing repairs. So now it is, now that the ditch is done, we're focusing on getting up to the ditch. And that's kind of all that's happening down in Juneau. And if you have any questions, there's my email as well, but also happy to answer any questions too right now.
Awesome. Questions in the room for Megan? I'm gonna have one, I'm sure. Anybody? Questions online, Matt? No. Megan, Juneau's 1/10 the size of Anchorage. Um, and you have like robust volunteer numbers, and you've got 3 paid crews working in Juneau proper, basically. I mean, I know some of them go a little further afield on Forest Service trails, but generally pretty close to town.
Mhm.
Why do you think Juneau's been able to fund and support that level of trail work for the size of community it is?
Ooh, yeah. I think in terms of like the amount of volunteers we get, I think one, I'm really pushy on getting people out on trails. But I think also a lot of people feel a deep connection to the trails that they hike on and love jumping at the opportunity to make it better. But in terms of funding, we kind of have a couple different sources. For our Forest Service projects, we've just been working really hard to get different agreements. And one of those agreements is a FDAS, which is a fee use agreement. And so since Juneau has, I believe, 9 Forest Service cabins. The fees from those cabins can then be reinvested in those trails to cabins. So that's one of our Forest Service agreements. So the more the people use cabins, the more we're able to direct that money back into the trails to cabins, which I think is really awesome. And then in terms of the city, the funding there actually is largely voter approved. So the majority of our funding that we've been using since 2022 and the cabin grant that we're about to complete this year is from Proposition 2. So in 2022, Juneau passed a bond measure focused on recreation that would include improvements to Adair Kennedy, which is one of our turf soccer and baseball fields. The ice rink needed a new roof, and then it included close to $1 million for trail improvements to be spread out over the next 3 to 5 years. And the first time that Proposition 2 ran, it was also a citizens initiative. So a bunch of people got together, kind of 3 groups, the Soccer Association, a bunch of trail users, and then I think some mountain bikers, they got together and put together this bond package with the city. So I think a lot of it is largely community driven. People recognize that this is one of the reasons why a lot of people stay in Juneau. It's one of the reasons I ended up moving to Juneau. I was supposed to only be in Juneau for 1 year. And yeah, so I think there's a lot of community push on knowing that trails are what keep people here. So getting that on the ballot or competitive grants, things like that.
Awesome. Cool. Thanks. Any other questions for Megan before we move to our next speaker? Great. Round of applause for Megan. Thank you.
Awesome, thank you.
I didn't I didn't pull the room. Maybe? Yeah. Can you still hear me? No, changed. Probably die. We're gonna switch to that one. One day we'll have a technology-free conference. I didn't pull the room. Who's hiked in Juneau? Okay, about same numbers as Sitka, maybe like 60% of the room, yeah. Also have an excellent trail system, and some pretty cool opportunities. We are gonna switch to an in-room speaker. So Mindy, is gonna come and be our next speaker. Mindy's the president of the Delta Junction Trails Association, one of the founders as well, and graduated in 1971 from Chico State with a bachelor's in rec administration and an emphasis in outdoor education and camping, which I feel like Chico State in the 70s was probably one of the only colleges with an outdoor rec.
It was the best, the best party school of America.
Oh.
But it was. So I know how to organize a party.
Nice, Mindy party in college.
Yeah.
You moved here in 1973?
Yes.
Yeah. She and her man Gene built their home in the woods at Dry Creek, and began their family, and they've spent 50 plus years working, playing hard, and making their dreams come true. And retirement and Delta Junction Trails Association continues to offer the greatest combination to pursue your passion for public outdoor recreation opportunities. Fabulous. I'm going to pull up your presentation,
Okay.
and I'm going to give you a stand so you don't have to hold this if you don't want to.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I think for your height, this is going to be perfect. Doesn't work for me.
I could just start talking about Delta while you do that.
But will you speak in front of the mic
Sure.
so that folks,
Okay.
oh, that's a W4. W9. Okay, here we go. Make sure you share and see. Oh boy. We'll see. All right, we're up. Maya and I switched computers, and now I'm on a PC, and that's just,
So lucky you're doing this, not me.
I mean, maybe. All right, oh yeah, okay. PowerPoint slideshow. Share. Here. I think I'm clicking it. Success. Okay. Oop. Oh, we did it. Okay.
Did the notes show up?
The notes are showing up for you, but not for the room, so they won't know
They'll know.
that you're
I guarantee.
reading anything. So we're gonna hide meeting controls. Great, and then I'm gonna turn this small. All right, you should be good to go, Mindy.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and then you're just gonna hit the left, right. There you go, and it takes
Oh,
a second
that
to
one?
load.
Oh,
This one
is
right
that
here.
one.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Well, thank you for having me. And Delta Junction Trails was just a group of us in 2012. We were excited about skiing in the Delta area, and there's no place to go. And so by 2015, we had formed DJTA, and then this nonprofit is an all volunteer group, 7 people on our board. At this time, we have put $1.3 million into trails in the Delta area. Our community is a unique place because it doesn't have a tax system or a borough. So we don't have any outside support coming in. We do have a small city government. So last year, DJTA worked on 3 projects with various partners we want to share with you. I'm taking you to the Lever Community Trail built with our first RTP grant, 2016 to 18, in the heart of Delta Junction. Right next to the Delta Junior Senior High School, looking into the wooded area, is a 12 by 20-foot wind shelter. This modular building comes in a box that you can fit in the bed of a pickup truck if you have a big bed. They're bear-proof, no ongoing maintenance, which is one of our goals here at DJTA. The hut was donated to us by Blake LLC, my son's business, and a past Delta High School graduate. Assembled and insulated, carpeted and finished by local contractor Silverline LLC. Electrical donated by Morley Electric, another past high school graduate from Delta. We stored the kit in my yard for a long time, 2 years. Moved it around a few times and finally found a contractor with experience to assemble the hut. It was so cool to watch it go up quickly 2 to 3 folks can assemble it in a day with a ladder, caulking gun, and a drill gun. Oh, and they told us, advised us, a 6-pack of beer helps too. Yeah. So these pieces go together, you caulk, and then you bolt them together. And it's kind of like putting together a craft project, is what my contractor said at the end of this. So his wife did help him with it. Mounted on a R25 insulated deck, the entire structure can be moved off-site if need be, as per DNR easement stipulations. Current value, all dressed out, materials and labor, is approximately $40,000. So how did we get this fabulous trail addition? I'm pretty sure most of you are familiar with the fact that Delta Junction has some extreme weather. We experience far below zero temperatures and brutal winds. We have always dreamed of a space to shelter. This is a 13-year dream in the making, and only ended up DJTA paying $3,000 from our budget. DJTA had our Delta Heavy Equipment Academy create the foundation gravel pad, followed up by the contractor's foundation. We applied for a grant to assemble and dress the hut. However, the grant fell through January 2025. Our inspired local contractor had experience doing work in a dome up north. Dedicated to the project, he completed the dome on his own dime, assembling that in the winter in time for Ski Club February 2025 for 72 elementary kids. There they are having a great day in the sun. Whew. Springtime, the hut was completed. Plus, DJTA volunteers helped install the insulation. In addition, we were awarded a grant from Golden Valley Electric for 2 1,000-watt safe electric heaters. So out of the wind, bright and ready for events, a hub for winter activities, let the fun begin. So DJTA does conduct at this time 4 free events for the community. And that's how we started our mission, is with 6 actually. We didn't ask for anything, no donations or fees, and that's what brought them into wanting to be a part of what we're doing. We held an additional junior senior high newly formed Nordic ski club at this hut the past winter, and in spite of frigid temperatures. Over 145 community members came out for our 15th annual Walk of Lights. We dressed up the hut with lighting inside and out, and we turned off the trail lights and lit up the trail with ice candles. It's kind of an iconic thing in our town now, so you ought to all come see what it's like. Gotta wear lights though. We're now taking you to the Riverwalk Park. These trails were also built with RTP grants. DJTA was presented with new challenges at the park, where we were faced with protecting 3.5 miles of non-motorized trail. We experienced some trouble with trail vandalism and erosion. Motorcycle and ATV traffic accessed the trail system last spring, which inspired us to install cameras, signage, and a swing gate at the entrance, which accommodated skiers and foot traffic. A local contractor brought in equipment, adding boulders at the trespass entry site, plus material to help stabilize embankments at 2 lookouts along the Delta River. Denali Fence donated fencing for public safety at embankments. Community partners installed Alaska range mapping and a memorial bench. These two projects are just a couple of our success stories last year, acquired through partnering, consistent public engagement, follow through, carefully and gently asking, and giving back to the community. DJTA is reaping the benefits of strong long-term partnering. The third project isn't as glamorous, but so necessary. It's what we call the business of trails. Who really knows when you sign up to do work towards your passion of trails, there is so much to learn and deal with in the business behind the desk instead of holding the shovel. Running a nonprofit and building and maintaining a trail association is so much information. Plus, with some of us aging out, we're looking towards succession plans and sustainability. Our board states that the Google Drive is a better way for informing, information sharing, organizing, and archiving. The pattern here is resource gathering, learning, gaining guidance through experienced professionals, through trail conferences, grants for assistance, grants for funding, hiring professionals, developing partnerships, being good stewards, and gathering followers, giving to our community. When you give out, you can get back so much. And thank you for having me.
Take care.
Yep, questions?
When is the Festival of Lights?
It is on Valentine's Day when it falls there, but it's the 2nd February every Saturday. And it is phenomenal. You light yourself all up. This year we did different ice sculptures and gave away prizes. And we were able to have older people or people that are handicapped that can't go around the trail be in the hut. And that was a goal of our community to begin with, is having a wind shelter like that. Because it's just brutal there. There's big wind that comes right down the beginning of the trail. We didn't know that at the time. Yeah.
Are there other questions for Mindy?
All right, thank you.
Have you had any leaking in the dome after the caulking?
No,
No.
and
Okay.
but it's brand new,
Yeah.
so it went through, yeah. And it went through an extreme winter this year, and it was built in the winter. So there was a lot of variables there, and it's insulated, but it's only 1 inch, and that's taped together. And believe it or not, you stick it, Velcro, and you stick the insulation on that fiberglass. So it is much like a craft project, and it does come out like we had 20 kids in there during the ski club, and everything stayed put, nothing leaked. Everybody had a good time, and they were not frozen when it was so cold. So the heaters, though, electric heater, we have 2 of them, and we're only wired for 1 in our trail system there. So we're going to have to be functioning that differently, but it is hard. It is taking the chill off. It's basically what it is.
Nice.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, got another in-room presentation that I'm gonna pull up. Actually, Maya, will you pull it up while I introduce Sarris? Sarris is gonna talk about one of our projects, one of Alaska Trails' projects from last year. Sarris Harris is a crew leader with Alaska Trails and moving into their 4th season with us. Sarris grew up in Anchorage and she says in her, or they say in their bio that they are happy to be returning to Alaska Trails for their 4th season. Hopefully that's still true after we do training next week. This will be their 3rd year running a crew. Previously with Alaska Trails, Sarris helped us build Step and Run on Hughey Ridge Trail and the McKinley Lake Trail in Cordova. We had a crew that grew moss and molds inside and out that summer in Cordova. It was a pretty wet one. And inexplicably, Sarris came back after that. And has worked on extensive reroutes, including on the Willowa Lakes Trail and Chugach State Park, which we're going to hear about. Copious amounts of brushing to clear the Childs Glacier airstrip in the Cordova summer. Sarris has a BS in environmental science, but after serving a term with WCC after graduating, they decided they like to dig and run saws more than they like to do science. So we're grateful that science didn't get you. Sarris loves knitting, listening to music, riding, skiing, climbing, fat biking, dog watching, chocolate, and other stuff. Do you want to talk with the mic in your hand or on the stand?
I think I can handle
You're
it.
over. There you go.
I think I can handle it.
Great.
Hello, everybody. My name is Sarris, and I'm a recruiter with Alaska Trails, and today I'm talking to you all about the Willowa Lakes Trail Project, which my crew worked on last summer.
Hide this.
So can I get a show of hands how many of you have hiked on the Willowa Lakes Trail before, and how many of you in the process of hiking there encountered a few more lakes than you were anticipating along the way? Yeah. So these photos are from a trail assessment done by Hughey, and you can see Tim George here pondering the situation because in each of these images, the trail goes directly through these knee-deep puddles. So this is a problem for user access and enjoyment, but also for habitat degradation as social trails bloom up around areas around these obstacles. So we had to do something about that. What did we do? It was a 10 or 13-week project that incorporated 10 critical areas along a mile-long stretch of trail. At the end of the day, it was almost 2,500 feet of reroute, almost 200 feet of retreading existing trail, over 1,000 foot of social trail rehabilitation, 160 feet of step and run structure built, 28 drains, handful of rock steps, and a couple of roots armored rocks. How did we do it? Lots and lots of hemlock root removal and shrub and stuff back and forth. I want to get into some before and after pictures with y'all. This is section A, before and after our facelift. You can see Corbin walking in this image is kind of where the old alignment is, and I hope that you're able to see the images well enough in the daylight. But you can see we kind of pushed the trail up out of the mud into the knuckle and like removed some hemlocks to do that. So that's section A. This was section F. What was going on here was there was a pretty substantial seep that was depositing directly into the trail, creating this 50-foot long puddle. And this is in a dry year too, so you can imagine what it's like in a wet year. So they always say you want to get the trail out of the water or the water out of the trail, and we try to do a little bit of both here by excavating a 40-foot drain over up here where Olga is working in that photo. We dug a drain to let the water pass across the trail to lower ground. And then we also installed step and run here in case the area does become inundated again. Now people have a durable tread surface to walk on. This is section E, the infamous mud hole. Many of you may be familiar with this part of the trail. There was a lot of seeps in this area, and so what we did was we dug a couple of channels to try and drain a little bit of the area. In the process of excavating that, we encountered some pretty big rocks that we then used to hold up these crush pads for the step and run to go across. The reason that we had to do that, typically we would use H sills, which is like a style of sill construction that provides more float in mud, but we didn't have enough sill materials on site for that, and so this was kind of our solution for that. Oh, and we also were sprinkling native seed around in the areas that we disturbed to kind of help with rehabilitation. What went well? Well, we completed the project with no major injuries, and the weather was awesome. I also want to highlight the trail assessment and alignment flagging done by Hughey. That was extremely helpful. This was my first real trail project, and I don't have a lot of experience with planning and design, so that was really awesome to have the guidance in the form of a 35-page document. The document was helpful. It helped with, what lumber we needed to order, and also for timing purposes, they had really good time estimates that fortunately were accurate for my crew, and it kept us on time so we're able to complete the project. Lessons learned. So we used grizzly wood for our sills in this project, and
Tell people what Chris was.
grizzly wood is a really cool plastic lumber that's made by a guy locally in Alaska. He has a trailer that he can like travel around and to places that have a lot of plastic and then just like extrude the lumber there. So anyways, it's a cool thing. We wanted to support it and try it out. But it's got some pros and cons. We did pre-cut all of it at our shop so we could dispose of the plastic shavings properly, and that made the sills the perfect size to fit in the super stacks for flying them out. So that was awesome. We did discover when we were driving timber logs in to secure the decking to the sills, the grizzly wood melted a little bit and then hardened, and that like welded the timber lock in there so you weren't able to back it out. This wasn't a huge problem, except for there was miscommunication at one point on the length of timber lock that needed to be used. And it ended up poking out the bottom into a rock and like elevating that section of step and run. So we propped it up and cut it off with hacksaw, and that solved that problem. However, I'm thinking about like for longevity's sake, you know, the decking is going to wear out faster than the grizzly wood likely will. And so if you're ever going in to do maintenance on a project that has a similar design to this, you might need to like bring a reciprocating saw or something out there to, because you won't be able to just rip the screws back out. Another challenge that we encountered was, oops, didn't know you could see that. Another challenge that we encountered was the helicopter GPS resolution was not fine enough to distinguish our 3 drop zones from each other. They were all within a mile of each other. And so, yeah, I think it's always good to over communicate during helicopter operations. And if you can, label the drop zones so that the helicopter pilot can see from the air what's going on. We also encountered frozen ground. A lot of you trailblazers have probably also encountered this. We tried to mitigate for this by pre-peeling back the tundra in areas where we were yet to work to kind of promote thawing, and then also clearing out hemlocks and upcoming reroutes while we were waiting for the ground to thaw out. Another lesson learned, there's one switchback that I think we could have done a little better with choosing which trees we were gonna remove. I did notice a moose cut the switchback, and I'm thinking the moose cut the switchback. Maybe the people will too, but we'll see. Maybe they'll surprise us. I want to give a special thanks. Oh, one more thing I wanted to mention is we did this project as a front country project. It was kind of on the verge of whether or not it made sense to be front country or back country, because it was, the work site was 3 to 4 miles away from the trailhead. So it was a lot of hiking every day. There were some people on my crew who didn't want to hitch out, and so we opted for the front country option. I don't regret doing it that way. However, that is something to consider with a lot of hiking, and that significantly shortens the workday. But yeah, could be done either way. I want to give a special thanks to my crew, Corbin, Daniel, Julian, and Olga. Chigash Park Fund for footing the bill. Kijek Technical Services for that trail assessment and alignment flagging. Alpine Air for flying out all our stuff. Chigash State Park for helping with closures and giving feedback. Judy and Haley for bringing us treats every now and again. Ben and Joe for guidance and support, and Carl Dashiell for epic photos. Does anybody have any questions?
Question? We ran the front country versus back country. We like kind of ran the numbers because there's like a cost to having a backcountry camp, which includes helicopter mobilization and a couple hours in helicopter, and you're cooking all your camp food out there and working with the state park about who's hitching out and how long they can hitch out for, and do they have to come out in between each one? Does the whole camp have to come down? What can stay, what cannot, what's getting bear fenced? And Willowa Lakes, again, most folks have been up there. It's like really popular. And so having an alpine camp or a near alpine camp, there was definitely some concern for the state park about having like folks living there all summer long. And I would say probably not every crew hikes as fast as your crew last summer, but your crew like busted it in every day. So in the end, I think it was probably kind of a wash financially, for like what it cost the project. Just you all got really fit.
Yeah, it was like an hour each way. Yes.
Origin of that whole route. Can you repeat the question?
The question for the computer books, was that originally a social trail? What's the history of the trail? I unfortunately do not know. Yeah. Does anybody else know? Can I phone a friend?
Lane. Can you come and give us a comprehensive history of Chugach State Park and all of its trails? Guys, this is Blaine Smith, and you don't know Blaine. What can you tell us about Willowa Lakes?
Started out as a social trail, but it's been a destination, and the original idea was for it to go out Long Lake and then coming out stuck in ice, but then the military had something to say about that because it trespasses on the military ground. So then it got dead-ended up at Willowa Lakes, but so the original entire design was never put through. But it started out as a social trail, and it was a trail of opportunity back in the 70s. It was put through by Doug Fessler and Dale Bingham and Rodak and all those guys. And so they had no trails. I mean, sustainable trails, even though the idea is thousands of years old, sustainable trails to Chugach State Park is not near that old. So,
Yeah, you did learn that. If you want to trespass egregiously, there's an even cooler loop. Talk about it later. But yeah, the Willowa Long Lake Loop is a beloved, and the Little O'Malley. I mean, this is a nice combo with Little O'Malley Peak. Like a lot of people love to do the Little O'Malley drop down to Willowa, loop around either from Glen Elms or Prospect Heights. But other questions for Sarris? Anything you want to add? Sarris, what are you working on this summer?
Red Shirt Lake Trail in the Nancy Lakes region, and then yeah, Denali State Park, doing some logouts up there, some other odds and ends. Also a couple inches in Whittier, working with Victor down there, and Rushing Gold Rock.
Awesome, thank you. Oh, one more.
This is also a popular ski route. Was that taken into consideration? Was that taken into consideration with the step design and so forth?
So for me in this, my preference would have been to put the trail on the other side of the creek. That was
my preference for doing that prescription would have been to have the entire trail on the other side. Basically, it was more south facing, better drainage, it just would have dried up a lot nicer. And I also think there was better material over there. We did that in June. We still encountered snowfields, frozen ground, so we could only do so much. We gave alternatives on how to approach each section and basically let it up to the field crew. So I don't know if that answers your question or not, but it was a muddy mess.
I think I didn't really consider skiers constructing this, but I do think that snow covers the steps enough that skiers will be able to pass. We don't have any steps bigger than like 8-ish inches.
And there's like, it's all step and run. There's not like a staircase section anywhere.
Yeah, there's no staircases and there's no bridges where there's a drop off that's more than, I don't know, a foot on either side.
Other questions? No? Thanks, Sarris. Great, we've got about 10 minutes left. We were gonna have one more in-person presentation from Matthew Schidner. He is a McCarthy resident, and there's a pretty great revitalization, or not revitalization, organization, maybe? People have been building trails out of McCarthy and Kennecott for a long time. But there is a new-ish Kennecott McCarthy Recreation Alliance that is trying to do some trails planning. He's unfortunately traveling, well, fortunately for him, probably traveling through Canada right now, and his schedule changed, so he is not here with us. But Matthew is a brand new dad. We were talking on the phone quite a bit about his project this winter, and he was like, okay, well, I gotta go to Belize, my wife's having a baby. And then kind of put it on pause for a little bit, and then he came back to it this spring. But he is the vice president of the organization, and they are arranged as a nonprofit. They're working to maintain and develop trail infrastructure in the park, primarily, Wrangell St. Elias Park and Preserve. And obviously, it's the largest national park in the United States. There's a lot of territory, but there's also a lot of historical use from the McCarthy Kennecott area into the park. There's kind of a diversity of history of recreation there in terms of type and legality and relationship with the park. So I think that this new alliance is really trying to have like a productive relationship with the park and try to do work that the park hasn't had the capacity to do. Matthew's been in the area for 30 years, McCarthy Kennecott. And I think it's pretty cool that this group is bringing up, and they want to really focus on maintenance in the area. But one thing that this highlights is what they applied. One thing that they applied for was the RTCA granting program. Who in the room has heard of RTCA? Yeah, awesome. So like, I think Delta Junction, did they help with your trails plan?
Yes. Now they're just gone.
Right.
Yeah.
It's kind of a tragedy we have going on. We have Denali Borough here. Yeah, Stephanie. So RTCA helped with the Denali Recreation and Community Plan and Committee. Helped facilitate that. They've done stuff in Anchorage. Has anyone else in the room had an RTCA grant? Well, yeah, we have, of course. But Will, what was your RTCA?
Developed the mountain bike alliance
Okay, yeah. Okay. RTCA helped Camber and partners develop the Off-Road Cycling Alliance. Anybody else? Yeah, Janice. Yeah, so they helped incubate STA and create this powerhouse nonprofit in Anchorage. So RTCA is the River Trails Conservation Assistance Program. Under the Park Service, they had a couple of staff here in Alaska, and they cut the Alaska program. And so I've talked to the Pacific Northwest director. I'm on the phone, with a person who's in Washington and a person who's in Hawaii about doing projects in Alaska. And so much of what they have done up here has been like very community focused. And I'm sure the people in Hawaii and the people in the Pacific Northwest are really talented, but like it's really different working with somebody out of state when you're trying to do planning. And I think also when you're trying to build credibility with a community when you're going out to do a trails plan, if the person who's facilitating it is zooming in from Honolulu, that's like just different. Anyway, so this is just bad news to share with you all if you hadn't heard that like we've lost this resource in the state. There is maybe a little bit of movement towards getting a position back to help with this type of work. But at the moment it's not a resource in the way that it was in the past. And so I know McCarthy Kennecott was really hoping that they were going to have significant RTCA support as they work on their trails plan and on their maintenance plan. So I think as a collective, as a community, if we can encourage National Park Service, if you have any good context there about like what a great resource that was for Alaska specifically, that would be great. And maybe we can all work on collective solutions to helping with planning going forward. Yeah.
Hiring and deferred resignation are affecting staff.
So it's a combination. So Zach Babb took a different position, and then Kristen Pace, her position was cut. So there's no more Alaska specific program, no more in-state positions. So yeah, it would be great if we had that resource still because it just, like, I don't know, 6 people in the room have had significant progress with their nonprofits or their plans because of that. Yeah, anyway, bad news to share. But in good news, there's good stuff happening in Homer. Camille, do you want to give us a brief synopsis of what's going on down in Homer? Great, we're gonna take a couple minutes before we wrap up at 2 to talk about the exciting trails progress in Homer. Thanks, Camille. I bullied Camille into doing
So
it.
I was just gonna say, she bullied me into this just before we started these presentations, so this is kind of off the cuff, and I apologize for not having even a map or anything. The Homer Cycling Club is taking the lead on an 11.5 mile hiking and biking trail system in the Eastland unit of Cottonwood Eastland State Park, which is a 2,600 acre section of Kachemak Bay State Park on the road system. It's been part of the park since I think about the 70s, and there've been absolutely no trails in the park, and here it's on the road system. Homer is very, very trail poor. We have minimal hiking trails on the Homer side of the bay. There is a biking system, small biking system, the Diamond Creek Trails, which many of you have probably heard of. Just for your own information, there's now a yurt there that you can rent year round, which is kind of delightful. The funds do go into, it's run by the Homer Cycling Club, and the funds do go into maintaining the trail. The Eastland Trails is a 3-phase project. Phase 1 consists of infrastructure, parking lot, about 3.5 miles of hiking and biking trail. Phase 2 is another 4.5 miles of mostly biking, bike optimized trails. And phase 3 will be another 3 or 4 miles of multi-use trail extending into the far outreaches of the park. Phase 1 got started last summer. The infrastructure is all in. It's located at 17 miles out East End Road. We hope to have phase 1 completed by the end of July and open to the public, part of phase 1. Phase 2 construction will get started also this summer, and we hope to have it completed by the end of 27, and then we will move on into phase 3. Phase 1 is fully funded. Phase 2, we're still working on the funding. Rasmussen, we got a very generous Rasmussen grant, which we wouldn't be able to go forward with phase 2 without, and we're working on continuing to raise funds. We will build phase 2 trails as funding permits, as the way all these projects work. Phase 1 trails are fairly what I call easy family friendly trails. The 2 bike trails are very flowy trails. The intent is that phase 1 would be all accessible prior to getting to the inner reaches of the park where the trails are more difficult. I think that kind of summarizes it very, very quickly in 2 minutes. I hope you'll come down and check them out, drive out. Right now, look at the parking lot. And we'll be working on getting more infrastructure in. I want to mention the Homer Cycling Club is taking the lead on this project. It is a project done in cooperation with Friends of Kachemak Bay State Park and, of course, Alaska State Parks. This is a situation where, as we all know, Alaska State Parks is horribly underfunded, has no resources, and so a nonprofit is coming in and building the trail system. So it's a unique partnership. We're both learning a lot, but everybody's very vested in making this a successful project. I can answer any questions.
Is there an explicit agreement between the nonprofit and the state park for future maintenance of the trail?
Absolutely, yeah. No, absolutely. The Friends of Kachemak Bay State Park and the Homer Cycling Club will be responsible for maintenance. We already have a very good working relationship with state parks in that regard, so that is not an issue at all. Yeah.
Other questions for Camille?
Okay, thank you.
Awesome, thanks folks. We are right on time. Thanks to our folks online, Ben and Megan and everybody in the room. I think there's lots of awesome, and I'm glad Camille ended that on a positive note. Sorry to hit you with the RTCA stuff in the middle of that. But there's so many awesome things happening generally. Generally, it's good news. Yeah, so we're at 2 o'clock. We've got 1 hour of conference left. I can't believe you've all paid attention for 3 days. We're gonna take a quick 15-minute break. So get your socializing in, grab information about National Trails Day and or the Kincaid Park Plan off the back table, use the restroom, drink some coffee. We're gonna talk volunteers for the last little time, and then we'll probably wrap up volunteers a little bit before 3 o'clock and have time for like community announcements if there's anything folks want to share with the group. Thanks. I'll let you pull up yours. I'll go grab you the diesel. Thank you. Yeah.
How are you?